Right. All right, looks like we are live. All right, welcome everyone. So tonight we're trying something a little bit different. Got the whiteboard on the go here. We're going to talk about how to negotiate happiness. And basically, everything is negotiable, and happiness is no different. And so, for those of you that are first joining me, this is your first time, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach, and I help business owners deal with feelings of depression and anxiety and frustrations, whether that is with their team or in their personal life. So I give both personal examples and professional examples. I draw from my own personal experience, strength, and hope. I draw from my corporate background, which was over 30 years in transport and logistics in a variety of different roles, and change management was a lot of the stuff that I did. But I'm also trauma informed. And so it was because of the healing and recovery that I have been through that I've been able to provide a lot of value. And it's understanding the emotions and how to move through those so that you can become happier. Because I believe happier people are more productive. We naturally, when we are in a place of feeling good and feeling positive, feeling happy about ourselves, we will naturally give more to every situation. So this brings me to when you are first in love, think of it. You're all excited, you think everything that the other person does is amazing, and you want to spend all your time with them. And then over time, that wears off. And this can happen in a new role, in a new job as well. So you are excited, or even your business, right? You're excited about it. You're going to build this thing and you're ready to go. And then it becomes routine or mundane, or now you start noticing the not so cool things, the stuff that you used to think was cute, like, the way that he uh, did certain things, or the way she laughed, and, you thought it was cute when she snorted, and then now it's just annoying, right? And then for her, she's like, he can't even breathe, right? So usually what's going on there is a failure to negotiate properly. And so these are negotiating tactics that I've used in corporate, and I've been able to apply these across the board in many different areas. And so happiness is always around being able to understand the fundamentals of negotiating. So, first thing is you have to know your bottom line. So you have to know at what point are, like, what are your deal breakers? What are the things? And I know there's a lot of relationship coaches out there. They're like, oh, you should have this list and you should check these things off. And you can do all of that stuff, and that'll give you a good start. But that's not going to have long term effects, because think of it, when we are in our 20s, or when we're in our 20s and we're looking for a relationship, those things may change. We're looking for a career, a job, or we're starting a business. What we do in our 20s is not what we're going to do in our 30s, and not what we're going to want in our 40s, 50s, and onwards, right? So it's a matter of understanding what are your bottom lines and being able to recognize the signs when you actually need to renegotiate. And a lot of times people don't talk about this kind of stuff, right? They're like, what do you mean renegotiate? Tina, I thought it was till death do us part. Yeah, that's the goal. That is the goal. That is not always the case. And I think a lot of times it's because, A, people don't understand the appropriate role of negotiation and understanding what it is they truly want and how to deal with that when things change. And things always change. The mistake that you can make is, hey, Emmanuel, welcome. The thing that you can make is assuming that nothing's going to change. Everything is going to stay the same. We're going to be in love the way we were on our wedding day, and it's going to be amazing the whole way through. And you can go a really long time and everything be great. I made it 20 years. So, but then things change. So let's go back. Let's talk about it. So you need to know your bottom line. So this is what I like to call is what are the parameters? So if we're looking at the situation of marriage, right? You have certain criteria that you want to make sure that is fulfilled when you are getting married. Do you both want kids? Do you want to live in the city? Do you want to live in the country? Do you want pets? Do you want to buy a house? Do you want to travel a lot? There are all kinds of different criteria that you have to have as your framework of what is important to you. Um, maybe you have certain issues or requirements. Maybe you have some flexibility. So making sure that you guys are both on the same page. And usually in the beginning, people are like, oh, you want this too? Oh, I love traveling. Oh, let's travel a lot. That's great. And that might be great when you're in your 20s, but then things will change. So it's a matter of understanding and having the parameters, the framework set up. And these are your hard non negotiables. So maybe you're like, you know what, 100% cheating is, it's done, it's over, right? That could be for sure non negotiable. It's like monogamy or nothing, right? Other people, they might be like, no, I'm open, I'm a little more free spirited, whatever it is. I'm not judging here. Do what you need to do for you to make you happy. The problem that ends up coming up is a lot of times people don't speak up about what they truly want. A, they don't understand it, they haven't done the inner work, they can't identify it. There's a lot of different reasons. Or they're like, hey, maybe like, I've been in situations for like jobs. It's like, well, you know what? I need a job like right friggin' now. So I'm just going to take this job that's available, even though I know I'm technically qualified for way more. I have done that in the past, bit me in the ass, but at the same time, there were also some opportunities. So I did learn, I did grow from that particular situation, but there was an underlying resentment that ended up causing challenges because I knew I should have been making at least 20 grand a year more, at least minimum, because of the skill sets that I had. But at the time, I didn't have a whole lot of room for negotiation. So knowing where you're at being able to negotiate, if you already have a job and somebody's trying to hire you for a job, there's a little bit more of a difference. You have a little bit more bargaining power because it's like, well, why should I leave the job that I'm at to come to your job, right? Or why should I leave the relationship I'm in to try something different? Whatever it is, or different city, or whatever it is that you're wanting to change. We have to understand what's in it for us to be able to change, and does this violate any of the parameters, the solid deal breakers, right? So and sometimes you can agree on certain things, but then over time things change. And so making sure that, so parameters is the first one, having the correct parameters or deal breakers. So hopefully you guys can see that, maybe on TikTok. Which way? There we are. So number one, parameters, deal breakers. Okay, and I'm out of screen. I got two different cameras here, so I gotta sort some things out. So bear with me, guys. Um, so parameters, that's the first one. These are the deal breakers. That's your framework of, and you have some sort of agreement on what it is that you're partnering up with, whether that's a business partner or um, a marriage or whatever it is, right? The next thing would be having clear expectations of the outcomes. It's like, okay, I want kids or I want growth opportunity if it's a business. Whatever your request is, you have certain expectations. And the worst thing you can do is have unspoken expectations. That is a guarantee resentment. That is a guarantee poison that is going to fester and toxic create a toxic environment, relationship, whatever it is. Hi, Spocky? Sorry, it's hard to read the name. Oh, there we are. Okay, now I can read it. Spocky, yes. So, clear expectations, the assumptions of what are the outcomes that you want to see, right? So, for example, if you got into a relationship that you wanted to travel a lot, and then the other person, and you both agree, you had that framework, and then the other person decides that they don't like to travel and they just want to stay home all the time, that is going to cause some friction. And so, especially if you did a little bit of people pleasing and you're like, yeah, I love to travel, and maybe you're just excited in the phase, but meanwhile you don't really like to do it. And it's like I saw a TikTok dating thing where it's like, oh, I love hiking, and they hate hiking. They've never been hiking, that kind of thing. So there's a difference between saying, hey, I'm open to trying things uh, to learn something new or try something new, but maybe you try it and you're like, I totally don't like this. But being able to communicate that and negotiate those things is important and key for your happiness. The worst thing that you can do is have unspoken expectation as what kind of outcomes. Maybe you're like, one person's like, no, I really want to have kids. Like, the only thing I've ever wanted to be was a mom or a dad or whatever. And the other person's like, yeah, I totally want a family, but they're not super, it's not high on their priority list, but it's like if it happens, it happens, right? So that can be one of those things where you have a mismatch of alignment, um, because you don't have very clear expectations, right, of what it is that you're looking for. Now, I know this is kind of taking it down almost like Big Bang Theory, right? You know, where Sheldon he pulls out the, like, the partner agreement or the rental agreement and the friendship agreement and kind of go through all of that stuff, right? And so you can have those requirements, and um, if those things are out of alignment, then that can be a problem, right? So it's a matter of understanding those clear expectations and have them up front, and then when things change, to be able to renegotiate that stuff again. Shh. Thank you. Goodbye. Wow. Some people need a hobby. I would suggest paint pours. Right? Need to Learn English for your job. Okay. How are you going about that? Are you taking a course? Are you there? I'm sure there's online coaches and stuff like that. Do you have any concerns with that? Do you need uh, help to support you financially? All right. Make a tea. Oh boy, we got them out tonight. Ah, even the trolls need happiness. Welcome. You're welcome here. Type away. Do what you need to do. All right, so number two is having clear expectations. Clear expectations. Because if not, you're going to have a lot of unmet needs, unmet requirements that you want for your life, and whether that's in business. So, if you're bringing on employees, then having clear expectations is going to be key at their success and your success, right? So if you don't do these things, if you don't learn to communicate this stuff, you will end up having a miscommunication, and that's going to lead to unhappiness and conflict and all of these kind of things. So the third thing is understanding the deliverables. What is the what is it that you're hoping to achieve? And this is important because you need to understand if something comes up that you now have either new information, new variables show up. Um, Maybe somebody liked to go out and party and you guys like to go out to the club and dance and do all that kind of stuff when you're in your 20s. But then you have kids. That's a new variable that gets introduced. And that now changes the playing field, right? Maybe somebody has an illness. That might change the playing field. And if you're trying to do this for a long term situation, you want to keep your employees on long term, you want to keep your marriage going, whatever it is, right? You need to be able to understand what are the deliverables that you're looking for. And this goes back to really understanding what are the parameters, right? Now, there can be certain things. So when I'm talking about the deliverables, we have different priorities on those deliverables, and those priorities can change, right? Maybe the frequency of sex is something that is important to you, of how often, and maybe due to an illness, now that kind of puts it lower on the priority, right? Maybe because of having the kids or something like that, there's things that will be introduced that may um, bump up or reduce something on your priority level, and being able to communicate with that, because for you, that might be number one, right? For them, it might be number four, right? Or vice versa, right? Because maybe this bumps down to number three for you if you're stressed out at work, right? You're not getting much sleep, you're not feeling well, whatever it is, right? So there's different variables of different priority lists of the deliverables that you are looking for in the relationship. Maybe it is clear communication is something that is important to you. And if that falls off, then that could be a problem. And this happens a lot in relationships. We're very open, we're excited, and this is personal or professional relationships. You're open, you're excited, everything's new. It's like, oh, you tell a story about something that happened in your past, and you're like, oh, me too. And then eventually you get to the point where it's like you're either telling the same stories, or it's like you really don't have much on the go, especially if things are going well. Have you ever noticed that? Is that when things are going well, we have a whole lot less to talk about sometimes, especially if you come from a background like I did where um, bitching was normal, right? It's like to talk about happy things, talk about goals and aspirations, and none of that stuff was talked about. It was all talked about survival and things like that. So maybe you have certain growth things, and maybe when you got together that kind of stuff was important to you. That's how you bonded. Maybe it was a friendship and you got together because you were bitching about work stuff. And then when you no longer, maybe one of you went to a new job, or you started to do other things, or maybe one of you started doing inner work, and now bitching and complaining isn't something that's appealing to you, and you want to talk about the positive things, and you want to talk about what is good in your life and what your goals are and how you're growing and what things are challenges, but you're not complaining, you're looking for solutions. There's a very different mindset. And so sometimes the unhappiness or the cause of a downfall on a relationship, whether that's personal or professional, can happen because of the lack of communication, not growing in sync. And I don't think that's always a bad thing, okay? Because sometimes it's part of our growth process that we have to pull away. Can you imagine a child that never leaves their parent's side? Well, they're never going to grow and they're never going to become fully functioning adults if they never leave their parent's side. So it is normal for a child to grow up, be supported through that process, and then if you've done a good job, they go off and they do their own thing and they have their own kids and they do the whole cycle over again, ideally. we won't get into the whole 4D thing. But so, understanding what your deliverables are and what is it that's on the priority list. So, sometimes you may have the same deliverables. It's like, oh, I love watching sci fi shows. And it's like maybe somebody's priority of sci fi shows is up here, or maybe yours is down here, or maybe it was the same and then it changed. So, understanding that in order to be happy, you have to constantly renegotiate those variables and understanding what is your priority and checking to see if they're still in a line with your partner, with your employee, with your customers. It's like imagine um, you bring on a customer and they are excited, they're happy that they're on board with you, they're happy that they're getting the service, but then they get in and they realize, oh, there was something that I didn't know that I needed that wasn't part of the original agreement, but I need this other thing, right? And so now you have to deal with that. You have to negotiate. How do you either get that? Do you charge them more? Do you throw it in for free? What do you do? Right? How you need to have a process on how to handle the challenges that come up, the shortfalls, the misalignment on whatever the parameters are. Because I can promise you, no matter how good you are at writing out those parameters, writing out your processes, writing out your SOPs, your deliverables, and being clear about those things, there will always be variables that come up and change things. Anybody who has a coaching program, it's like, okay, you get so many things, you get these things in there, and there will always be somebody that will ask you for an exception. And so having a process in place on how you're going to deal with those exceptions, how you're going to mitigate the challenges that come up with them, who's responsible for that, what are the parameters, what are the boundaries, what's the escalation process to be able to understand how to deal with those things. Can you have maybe one of your customer service reps deal with most of the questions and then have thresholds of when it becomes too much, you bring it up to somebody else, right? Same thing with a relationship. It's like, okay, how often are you going to talk about the relationship and where you guys are aligned or not aligned? How are you actually going to handle conflicts? Do you have some sort of way that you've agreed upon, that you've negotiated, okay, this is how we're going to handle conflicts? And do that before you get pissed off, before you lose your shit and you want to, you know, say things that are going to end up damaging the relationship. So make sure that you understand and have some sort of process agreement, and then make sure that that is not carved in stone, that this is always the way. It's no different than if there's a challenge that comes up in a workplace, right? The first thing you do is understand, did the person follow the process? Did we even have a process in place, or were we just winging it, right? So if they had a process in place, then make sure, are they following the actual process? And if they are, where did the gap happen? Where did the shortfall happen? How do we bridge that gap? How do we mitigate those challenges that have come up in that? And I had to do this many times in my corporate. This is about negotiating happiness. And so I'm giving both personal and professional examples in this because I help business owners deal with challenges and emotions that come up, either personal relationships or professional relationships. So they happen in both areas. So feel free to stick around and listen in and see if maybe this helps. If not, I wish you all the best. Okay, so understanding the new variables that come up and being able to have a process for being able to negotiate those challenges, right? And whether that's in your personal relationship, it's like, okay, you know what? To think that you're never going to have a fight or an argument, how do you actually deal with those things? How do you make sure that you fight fairly? How do you make sure that you bring up something that is important to you, or you notice, hey, I thought we were aligned on these two things. We seem to be off track. This seems to be more important to me than it is to you. Is that the case? Has something changed? What is the new variables, right? And that can be for everything. And needing to have this proper open communication is going to be key. And being able to truly understand your emotions and what's going on with you so that you don't react in a negative way and that you're able to come to the table with the same calm that you would in a business situation, right? You don't you don't just spout off in a business situation. You know that there's something on the line, yet we often fail to do this in our personal relationships. We are very careful in our business relationships. Why? Because money's on the line. But we fail to notice that when we are in our personal relationships a lot of times. And um, it's like you always hurt the ones that you love, even when you're not trying to, even when it's not deliberate. But then when it happens to you, it feels like it's deliberate from the other side. So learning how to negotiate properly and how to be non-reactive and open in that situation, just like you would in a business situation, is one of the keys to being able to understand, okay, I thought these were the parameters. I thought we had clear expectations, and I thought these were the deliverables and outcomes that we were going to get from following this process. So if you follow that process and then you see that, okay, did somebody follow the process? No? Oh, okay, they went off and they did their own thing. Well, get them back on track and follow the process. The process isn't broken. That's what we've identified actually works. So we just need to get back on track and follow the process. However, if the process was followed and it's still not working, then you need to reassess and you maybe either need to renegotiate terms. Maybe it's a matter of discussing who does what around the house, right? Household chores, right? Who cooks, who cleans, who does this, who does that. And maybe originally it was okay, they were okay with taking everything on, but maybe there's additional demands at work that are demanding on your time. So now you aren't able to meet those original expectations. And if you're not communicating about that, then somebody's going to end up getting resentful along the way. So making sure that you're communicating about the new variables and what those variables are, how long those variables are going to go on, and do we actually need to change the process? And that's where you negotiate with one another of like, oh, well, if you're going to be staying late, that means I always have to pick up the kids. That means I have to leave work early, whatever it is, right? You have to renegotiate those things. And when, again, if we don't have clear expectations, those are premeditated resentments and those are going to lead to long-term unhappiness. And that is definitely not what we want. So the second thing is making sure that there's the alignment in values. Maybe you both still agree on those things, but the priority level has changed. And making sure it's like, okay, if this is a one on my list and it's a five on your list, how can we bridge the gap and maybe make it, I can bring mine down to a three and you can bump up to a three kind of thing, and then we meet in the middle. So there has to be some sort of negotiation and there has to be some sort of compromise through communication and clear expectations on what the deliverables are and working together to always solve the problem. And this is very much a change management kind of style, and that can be applied to your personal life, not just your professional life, right? And then because of those different priority levels, maybe that's um, communication, entertainment, right? Maybe somebody likes more quiet time than the other person. One likes to go out and have a lot of fun, and the other one's a little bit more of a homebody. Whatever it is, right? Because a lot of times we get into relationships and it's opposites attract, right? So being able to understand where, yes, you value those things. Maybe you have a different approach on how to deal with the kids, right? Of how to discipline the kids or how to teach them or help them grow. And maybe she's softer and he's harder or whatever it is. And being able to find that middle ground and negotiate so that you can both be happy and truly understand where each other is coming from. So, whether it's a relationship, a job, or a client, or a contract that you are landing, whatever it is, there are sub components that need to be negotiated within the contract. So, and I know you're thinking like, well, a contract, Tina? Come on, that's not very romantic. I know, but whether you talk about it or not, I can promise you there are expectations. We all have this internal list, and that may change, right? You may think, okay, I thought we negotiated all these things, we talked about these things, and maybe you're just like, okay, I'm going off the original assumptions. Somebody else is like, okay, those are good assumptions, and yes, I agreed to them, but then these things happened and changed, and you guys don't talk about it. I can promise you that will cause unhappiness. Example, a work example, right? Somebody comes in, they believe it is, they're going to be working from 9 till 5, right? And it's a salary position, there's no overtime, so they're understanding that kind of stuff. And they know that from time to time they're going to have to stay a little bit late, and they're fine with that, based on the frequency. But it's never really talked about. It's kind of like an understood, this is going to be from time to time. But if this starts happening where it is ongoing and every day you're having to stay an extra 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is, because some sort of challenge or problem comes up at the end of the day, or there's a meeting that you have to come in earlier for, or something like that, or you're expected to work through your lunch, and all of these things, they happen slowly over time. What's going to end up happening is that's out of alignment from the original parameters, expectations, and deliverables of what is expected. Because this person came on, they're expecting a 9 to 5, they're expecting a certain compensation for that. And expectation without compensation is exploitation. Okay? So expectation without compensation is exploitation, right? And so people are really going to be upset when you push the envelope and you extend those boundaries. Welcome from East Africa, Kenya, welcome. So when you're pushing those boundaries, that is a surefire way to guarantee unhappiness in a relationship, whether that's a personal relationship or a professional relationship. You know, I've seen this so many times, especially on all the projects that I have worked on for change management, system implementations, all of those kind of things that I've done in my corporate career. And I would always go through different contracts, right? So I was in transport and logistics, and and they always gave me the contracts to read because I went through it with a fine tooth comb, and then I would communicate back, and I'd be like, hey, I noticed that the wording on this is saying, we would start, you got charged a certain amount for if trailers sat in their yard for a certain amount of time, right? And so then they're called demurrage charges. And so if that trailer was sitting there out over a certain amount, then they would start charging. So one of the things that always ended up happening, and this comes from experience, right? You think, oh, okay, 2 days demurrage. That seems simple enough, but there's things where sometimes it's like, well, do I count today as day one, or do I count tomorrow as day one? And just that simple thing, it's like, okay, so if it's Monday, do I count Monday and Tuesday are free, and then by Wednesday it starts being charged, the demurrage charge? Where somebody else might go, okay, the trailer was dropped on Monday, so the first 24 hours is Tuesday, second 24 hours is Wednesday, therefore those two, up until Wednesday, it's free, and then you start charging me on Thursday. And there have been so many arguments and so many dollars that were argued about, and unhappiness and battles went back and forth between two companies just because of unclear communication, uh, not clear expectations, not clear on the deliverables, not sure what the parameters are. So this is why I would get the contract so many times, because I would go through all of that stuff and I would question, and then I would revise the contract to make sure that it had those parameters in there. Why? Because I knew what kind of fights and I had to clean up the messes of when those things happened. So being able to understand each part of the contract, whatever it is that you're negotiating, right? And being able to renegotiate new parameters, new clear expectations, and know what your walkaways are. So, in example, in a relationship, right? Um, I grew up in an abusive home. If there is any physical violence, you get one shot and you better take me out because that will never happen again, right? I absolutely will not hit you, and I expect the exact same for me, right? So those are the kinds of things that are important. And I learned that because I also remember friends of mine when I was younger and they were married, they were okay with that. They would punch each other in the arm all the time. They'd wrestle and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And I was mortified by that. I was just like, oh, hell no. Why? Because violence escalated in the home I grew up in. So I don't even open the door to that. And although I did some of that stuff with my brother, I would wrestle and fight with him all the time until I realized and I started to do inner work. And I was like, I never want him to feel hurt by my action. And I don't want him to ever physically feel that harm from me. And when I realized that, because it was normal for us to just hit each other all the time. And when I started to do inner work, I was like, I'm never going to do this again. I made amends to him. I apologized for all the times that I had hit him. And oftentimes, because he was my younger brother and all of the frustrations that I felt, that went downhill. And so he was the one that got it taken out on him. He also looked up to me to be kind of like a mother figure for him. And I was very much an introvert, and I would escape by getting lost in books. And so, in order to cope with that, my brother would also torment me, and he would do things to deliberately try and aggravate me because even negative attention is better than no attention. And so, negative attention, fighting with me, was still something that he got some sort of attention because there was a lot of neglect because our parents worked a lot. So, those were challenges. But being able to understand what are your deal breakers, that absolutely, if this line is crossed, absolutely, like no different than in a company, you catch an employee stealing, they're done. No matter how great they were beforehand, no matter how many amazing things that they did, if they go and steal from you, they're done. And maybe it was by accident, maybe it was something that they didn't realize, right? Or they thought it was okay, or it's like, oh, I'm going to replace it, and whatever it is, you got to know what your bottom lines are. Absolutely, that you will not tolerate those things. That is the number one thing for negotiation. Just like, if you're going out to buy a car, right? You know the maximum price that you can pay, right? Or the price that you're not willing to go over that price. And stick with those kind of things, right? And understand maybe, say in relationships, maybe fitness is really important to you. How are you going to deal with it if your partner gains a bunch of weight? Maybe it's through illness, maybe they have to go on a certain medication. Are you still in it for the long haul, or is that stuff really important? Maybe they get hurt in an accident, and that changes things. Are you going to still stick with that? How are you going to deal with that? Now you have to renegotiate, what does happiness look like with these new variables? So really being able to understand um, what the parameters are, what the clear expectations are, what the deliverables are, and where your priorities are. What new variables got introduced? Was there a misalignment of values? Is this just a temporary thing? Did we just kind of stop following the SOP? Did we stop communicating about things? And how do we get ourselves back on track? And knowing that this process actually works. It's not that the process is broken, we just stop doing the process. So it's a matter of understanding those kind of things and being able to negotiate all of the sub points of those contracts, right? Maybe something was really, really important to you in the beginning and you're like, it's not so important now. I don't even have time for that, right? I'm too busy focusing on work. I'm too busy focusing on taking the kids to events or soccer or whatever it is, right? So but making sure that you're in alignment of what those priorities are. Maybe something's a 1 for them, it's a 5 for you, and how do you meet in the middle so that you can both be happy? And that requires negotiation and tactics. So in the example that I gave for the transport and the demurrage charges, of being able to clearly say, okay, you know what, we'll accept the it's Monday and Tuesday and you start charging on Wednesday, example, but in order for that, instead of it being $75 a day, I want it down to $50. If not, then give me it's Tuesday and Wednesday, you start charging on Thursday, and then I'll pay you your $75 kind of thing. Whatever it is, right? So being able to understand and negotiate whatever the new terms are and be able to find a win-win situation for all parties involved as much as possible. So that is the training for today. I don't know if you guys like this Blackboard kind of thing. Let me know in the comments. Feel free to type in what your takeaways were and what you got out of this. And then if you jumped in halfway and you want to be able to catch up on what I've talked about at the beginning, then go to my YouTube channel. It is Coach Tina B 125. Click on the subscribe button and then you will get notified when I've uploaded new videos. And today I actually uploaded my 100th video. So there's lots of stuff that you can go back. It's with all these dots, I can't actually read the writing on the dots on my shirt. I do show places in Kenya on YouTube and call you out. Okay. So Davey Mo has got a YouTube channel, so go ahead and check him out there. He shows places available in Kenya. There you go. There you go, Davey. So tap the screen, give me some energy, give me some love, and go to my YouTube channel, Coach Tina B 125. Click on subscribe, and you will get notified when I've uploaded the trainings, the live trainings that I do every day on there, and I will give you new information. All right, so guys, that is the training for today. I hope you found it enjoyable. I would love to know what your takeaways were from this. So comment if you're on Facebook and you're watching, comment below, or if you're on YouTube, make sure you send me a comment. Tell me you hate it, whatever. Send a troll over, I don't care, whatever it is. I really want some sort of feedback because after 100 videos, I'm not getting a whole lot of feedback and I really need to know, is this actually helpful for you? Does this work for you? Are you gaining some sort of value out of it? If not, please let me know what kind of questions you have so that I can tailor the training to the people that are watching it and helping you guys become happier. So with that, guys, I'm going to wrap up tonight and we'll see you again tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye.